Leith, good morning to you.
Yes.
Figures on Thursday showed 125,000 permanent and long-term arrivals landed in Australia.
Did you hear that? Oh, good morning, everybody. But did you hear that? On Thursday, figures came out that 125,000 permanent, the word permanent is relevant here, arrivals arrived here in Australia. Now, I'd like to know how vetted these people are, what makes them permanent straight away, and what skills are they bringing to Australia? Because wasn't the whole thing about getting these migrants to Australia with skilled migrants because we don't have enough skills here and we're lacking in some areas? Um, yeah, this is just. Oh, I've got such a rant that I could go on here. It's unbelievable. Um, I think I might start with good morning, everybody. Yeah, it is now the 15th of March, and the world is falling apart. And we need to keep strong and keep powerful, and keep kind, especially to your friends and family, and of course your dear darling animals, because without you, you and they are nothing. Yeah, just I've been focusing on the migration thing for a while. Obviously, we've got a huge housing situation here in Australia, and continuing to allow these people to come here or bring these people here. As soon as they come here, they're pretty much being funded by the government, whether it's through NGOs or whether it's through the federal government or the state government, is irrelevant. At the end of the day, it all comes from taxpayers' money. And they're getting services that are not available now to the Australian citizens. And it's disgusting. It's a backflash to what's happening in Europe, when you think of what's happening in America. Then you think of what's happening in Ireland, what's happening in Iceland, and what already happened years ago in mainstream England and all the EU. Just think of what happened to Sweden and France and all the rape gangs and the no-go zones, all from migrants or illegals or asylum seekers, as they call them. They're not asylum seekers. They're economic refugees. They don't like their home country because, for one, they may not like their wife anymore because she's got fat and ugly, and they've got responsibilities and they've got children that they have to look after. So they've found another way that they can get out of it nice and easy. Just leave the wife and the children and come to a Western country, because they will open the doors, open with welcome arms, and give you a big hug and a big kiss and some money and a place to live and food and support and everything else. And then there's lots of other women that you can get. So my thoughts of their situation is they want a new life with a new wife because they leave the old wife behind with the children. If they were really refugees and they were placed in displacement for some type of persecution in their home country, don't you think you'd take your wife and your children too? You wouldn't leave them in harm's way, would you? Of course you wouldn't. You'd take your children. But oh no, of course not, because that's not why they're leaving. They're leaving because they don't want the wife and they don't want the children. They want these hot, sexy Western ladies that, are like sex goddesses and like porn stars, and they can just come there and take it and do whatever they want. No, that's not how it works here in the Western countries. So leave your baggage at home. Don't bring your garbage here. We don't need it. So I'm disgusted on what's going on. And the way I look at it, if our government isn't voted out, like the Labor is just like the Democrats in America, which I call the demon rats, because they are. They're like when a squirrel puts all of his shells or all of his nuts, his little acorns away, and then the rats get in, and they sort of, they don't eat it. They just open it and destroy it, so nobody can eat it. And that's what the Labor Party is doing here in Australia, and trying to do the whole referendum with the voice. Have you not seen, or have a look and see, just do a Google search for native title claims, and you'll be astounded to see how much of Australia is soon going to be handed over to the Aboriginal people, the Indigenous people. And they have been deemed through the federal government that they're not capable or reliable, or whatever word you want to use, of looking after these new properties or these new assets. So they've got NGOs, some non-government organisations that can, oversee their jurisdiction and the implementation of looking after these assets, which means taxpayer money, which means that the Aboriginal people will not have control. They will not have any decision-making prospects on the land. And if there's any resources or assets there, well, it's going to be stripped, isn't it? I don't know if anyone follows through, Mr. Jones and Infowars. Yeah, there's a big thing about Haiti And the main reason that they're destroying the place, obviously there's a lot of cannibalism happening there. We know that they're voodoo. So is it cannibalism or is it voodoo? Could be a combination of both. Maybe they're doing hexes on people. But yeah, apparently there's a lot of gold in their grounds at Haiti. And they want to get their hands on it. So it's sort of like what they did in Maui and Lahaina. To access the land, you've got to displace the original people that are on it. And the best way to do that is to create fear. And so they're using fear under, if you stay here, you might get eaten. Oh, you better get out of here, pack up and go. So they can come in and sweep and steal all the assets and take full control, because it's all about money and power. And they don't care about us. They don't care about you. They don't care about your family. They don't care about your children. They don't care about your animals. They don't care about anything that you care about. They care about themselves, because they're selfish and they're godless. And we need to say no to these people. So yeah, the situation here in Australia is disgusting, and we need to vote these assholes out as soon as possible. I'm going to let this play a little bit more and I might jump back in. Excuse the construction noise in the background.
Meet in January. Dick Smith calls it a disaster for families. What's your view on our migration levels?
Yeah, look, I think they're far too high. Just simple as that. And the reason for that is simple. So, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics' latest national accounts for the fourth quarter that were released last week, Australia's population grew by 680,000 people last calendar year, so in 2023. So that's the equivalent. That's the equivalent of 1.5 Canberras in one single year. And we only added 166,000 homes to us.
Did you hear that? Over 500,000 people here, and only build 160,000 or 130,000 homes. You don't need to be a scientist or a mathematician to figure out that that doesn't stack up. It doesn't make sense. This is why they want everybody in these 15-minute cities. So one apartment has maybe 15 people in it, and they do shifts. This is like Soylent Green. That's what's going to happen. You need to go back, and I'll try to put the link to the video that shows all of those dystopian movies that you can watch for free. I can't put the actual links down because they won't hold, or they'll block my video, but I can type them down. So you need to watch Soylent Green, need to watch also Logan's Run, Brave New World, and 1984. Maybe even Escape from New York, and there's a few more that I'm trying to put in there, because they tell you what our future is, and it's absolutely disgusting. And you need to protect your family and protect your children, and look at what's happening in Ireland, look what's happening in America, look what's happening throughout other parts of Europe. It's Iceland apparently is the latest one, and these places like Iceland and Greenland, they don't even have an army. Their population is so small that it's not financially viable to have an army. So they have a little port, and they might have a few coastal boats that go around to make sure that their border is protected, but they don't have an army. And now the migrants are going there, and they are instilling fear and animosity and demanding things be changed to suit them. So this is where the whole Black Lives Matter thing was perfectly put in place, to make people under the understanding that if you don't, just because somebody looks different to you, you've got to be nice to them, that you have to respect them. But what about the reverse of that? They're coming to your country. It's like when you invite a friend to your house and they go, "Oh, I love your house, it's beautiful, but I don't like your furniture. Oh, and I don't like the food you're eating. Oh, and I don't like the way you've got this set up here. Can you change the music, please? Can I turn the air conditioning to a different temperature? It doesn't suit me. Oh, I don't like the toilet paper you're using. Can I use can you use a different toilet paper, please?" You'd say, no. If you don't like my house, then I'm sorry about that, but this is my home. And this is what they're doing to our country. And our government is going, "Oh, sorry, we didn't think about that. Oops, hold on. Wait there and I'll go get something for you. And here's some money to keep you happy while I come and fix everything for you." And that's where Pauline Hanson was so right when the whole thing started with, the kids in kindergarten and in daycare couldn't celebrate Christmas. You couldn't have Christmas carols. You couldn't have anything. When was the last time you actually heard Christmas carols in the shops? Last Christmas, I didn't hear any at all. Even the streets where people were doing the streets with the Christmas lights, they weren't even on here on the Gold Coast that I saw. So, they're trying to destroy us. And once again, it comes back to the global citizen thing, where you're no longer a citizen of your country, you're a citizen of the world. And it's all for one for all, which doesn't work. because it won't bring the people in the third world countries up to our standard of living. It'll bring our standard of living down to them. So that's where their word equality comes in. And of course, they're going to be up there as the upper level, and we're going to be down in the lower surf level. And I won't submit to any of that. I won't agree. And I want my children to have a future. I want my children to have a life and prosperity and joy and happiness and enjoy this beautiful country that we have. But soon it won't belong to us. It'll belong to the world. And that's the whole Great Reset. And you need to go and have a look at Tim Cohen, because I do think that Charlie Boy is the Antichrist. I really do. I think that he's an evil, pedophilic, dystopian hatred man, and now that his son's wife is sort of under dubious suspicion of even being alive, and why is she photoshopping her own photos? Who does that? She's come out saying, "Oh, I did it." And this is what she's not saying it with her voice, and she's not saying it with her face. Somebody is writing that for her. So I think that maybe she's not alive anymore. I think that she found out the truth and was going to expose everything, and that they've had to do a Diana on her. That's what I think. But anyway, I'm rambling on, ranting on. I'm not going to play any more of this because I might get a strike for copy infringement of his videos. As you can see, he doesn't have a huge following, but you should follow him. Yeah, if you're here in Australia, follow him, because he'll give you an upside on what's happening and what the government are planning, what their actions mean to us as civilians and taxpayers. So I think that we're going to still end up with a whole heap more migrants coming here. That's the whole idea, to destroy our society. Then they're going to have the indigenous land rights, the native title land rights, strip half of the country of its jurisdiction, and there'll be no-go zones like Alice Springs and Ayers Rock, or whatever they call it now. I'm still going to call it Alice Springs and Ayers Rock. That's what it is to me. And you won't be able to go there without special permission. And that's going to happen through all of Australia. So we need to stand up and say no, because at the end of the day, we're taxpayers. But then you have to think, what the Commonwealth means. Commonwealth means that common, which is everybody, and wealth. So everybody's wealth belongs to them. So the Commonwealth belongs to the royal family, or to Charlie Boy. So when he gave that speech about he has billions of dollars at his disposal, he was talking about Satan. He wasn't talking about God. He wasn't talking about Joe Biden. He was talking about Satan, because he is the devil in disguise. But anyway, I'm rambling and ranting, and this is the third time I've tried to do this. Each time I'm changing my tactics a little bit, because it's just not recording. But anyway, look after your family, look after your friends, and look after your dear darling animals. And and Godspeed to all. Godspeed. And watch this video that Leith is putting down. Okay, bye. Hey everybody, have a look at this. This is Ireland, in Dublin, and I love Dublin. I think it's a lovely city, and to see what's happening here is absolutely a disgrace. I keep going on about Ireland and Australia and the similarities. We are both islands, so we're surrounded by water. Obviously, Ireland has a bit of a closer connection, because Northern Ireland still has an adjoining border, and of course that is run through the EU. And this is how half of these migrants are getting there. And it's a disgrace to see this, because this guy talks about his situation, and I've seen other situations in Ireland where people are talking about why they're classed as refugees and why they're fleeing, their homeland. And these comments and these ways that they believe that they're being persecuted make no common sense. They're not logical. This guy here is talking. Anyway, you can listen. I'll put some of the video here, and the rest of it I'll put a link down below, and you can watch it yourself, because this is what's happening here in Australia. These people are saying that they're coming here because they're being persecuted. What are they being persecuted by? Nothing but hatred for their home country, and the desire to be somewhere else. And I will stick to my grounds. They want, and because they're always men, they want a new life and a new wife. And no, the Western, because by implementing them here in a Western country and impregnating all of the Western ladies, they're half breeds. So it's a blending pot, which is what Australia has always been. We've always been a diverse blending pot, or mixing pot. But when you get too many people coming, unfortunately, in those cultures that these gentlemen are coming from, they are the ruler of the family. One thing I will say about the Jewish faith and the nationality and the religion of the child is dependent on the mother. So a Jewish woman, the father could be any nationality, any religion, but if the mother is Jewish, the child will be Jewish, because any woman, only a woman can give birth to a child with all complete understanding that that is the mother, whereas anyone can be the father. So that's where the Jewish people, the religion is based on, or the ethics of the child, or the future of the child is based on the mother, not on the father. And so to have all of these people coming here is an absolute disgrace. And this is what's happening in Australia. But you've got to think, we don't have that many migrants. They're all getting the housing here. Down the bottom of where I am, there's a couple of housing commissions, and I've noticed that they're sort of, and once again, I don't want to be racial or bigoted in any way. I'm just making observations here, and what's in front of me. And let's just say that the people that are now getting these housing commission homes, which are all funded by the taxpayer, are people that should not be on the list to even receive one, because here in Australia it's about a 10-year waiting list to get on state housing. So how these people that have just come to the country, that don't speak English, that don't know how to use public transport, don't know how to use any of the lifestyle features here, so they don't know how to use the banking system, they don't know how to, they know nothing. How they can walk straight into a public housing accommodation astounds me. And that shows me that what they say, no, they don't get special treatment, what a load of bullshit, because it's happening right in front of my eyes. But this is what's happening to Australia. So this is migrants out in the street, but here in Australia it's the Australian people that are out in the streets, because the migrants are giving the homes. These ones are here are demanding housing. Listen to this.
Okay. Where are you from?
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan. How long you've been here?
1 month.
1 month. Okay.
So do you want your streets looking like that? Do you think your children should have to walk up and down streets to get to school, to get to friends' houses, to get to their sporting events, to get anywhere in our beautiful country with this in the backyard, even if it's full of Australian people? It's bad. It's not good for their mental health. Think about the mental health, how destructive this is to children. And it's going to become a cycle. It's like recovering from a war situation. You see the decimation and you're just happy to be alive. You're just happy to have friends and family around you. You're happy to have some security, which is exactly what these children that would be walking past this on a daily basis would be thinking. But all of a sudden this comes there and you're uncertain. You don't want to go down that street anymore, because look at these. This is black tents everywhere with writing all on it. And it's full of men that sound weird, men that use the back of the corner of the alleyway as their toilet. So it stinks. And these people, don't clean themselves. So can you imagine the smell and the sight and the fear that a child would have on that? And that's a memory for life. Think back to your childhood, what scared the crap out of you. It might have just been a silly horror movie, but these kids are living horror movies every day.
Hello.
Again, where are the women? Where are the children? They're all these young-aged, military-aged men. And they all seem to be wearing nice clothes, don't they? Nice clothes. They don't seem to appear dirty or like in any way that they've gone through any trauma. They're not having any injury anywhere. So you have to think, why are they there? And the fact that they're all lined up like that, it's almost, and the way that they've got this organised to clean up, it's like it's a military thing. Have they had some military training to instill all of this, so they know what to do in a situation like this? They probably have. Are they part of the United Nations peacekeeping force that will then be turned upon you as a citizen when you don't comply, or when you go, hey, I've had enough of this shit?
Guys, you just move in, is it?
Okay, I'm going to leave it here because I think I've gone on too long. and I put some more on a next video. So yeah, take care, watch these videos, pay attention, because this is coming to Australia, guys. It might take 6 months to a year, but it's happening. And soon it will be the Australian citizens in the streets like those guys. And then they'll have all of the where's this 600,000 migrants? Where are they? And what about the 130 or 160 that arrived just in January? Where the hell are they? I'm sure that they've got a nice roof over their head and rent paid and don't have to pay for, you know, huge amounts for power and services. I can guarantee that. Yeah, no, charity starts at home, and we need to vote the current governments out, vote these assholes out. They're parasites, that's all they are, they're bloody parasites. But anyway, Godspeed to all, Godspeed.
First of all, can you detail for us what life in this brave new world which you fear so much, or what life might be like?
Well, to start with, I think this kind of the dictatorship of the future, I think will be very unlike the dictatorships which we've been familiar with in the immediate past. I mean, take another book prophesying the future, which was a very remarkable book, George Orwell's 1984. Well, this book was written at the height of the Stalinist regime and just after the Hitler regime. And there he foresaw a dictatorship using entirely the methods of terror, the methods of physical violence. Now, I think what is going to happen in the future is the dictators will find, as the old saying goes, that you can do everything with bayonets except sit on them. That if you want to preserve your power indefinitely, you have to get the consent of the ruled. And this they will do partly by drugs, as I foresaw in Brave New World, partly by these new techniques of propaganda. They will do it by bypassing the sort of rational side of man and appealing to his subconscious and his deeper emotions and his physiology even, and so making him actually love his slavery. I mean, I think this is the danger, that actually people may be in some ways happy under the new regime, but they will be happy in a situation where they oughtn't to be happy.
But let me ask you this. You're talking about a world that could take place within the confines of a totalitarian state. Let's become more immediate, more urgent about it. We believe, anyway, that we live in democracy here in the United States. Do you believe that this brave new world that you talk about could, let's say in the next quarter century, the next century, could come here to our shores?
I think it could. I mean, that's why I feel it's so extremely important here and now to start thinking about these problems, not to let ourselves be taken by surprise by the new advances in technology. I mean, for example, in regard to the use of the drugs, we know there's enough evidence now for us to be able, on the basis of this evidence and using a certain amount of creative imagination, to foresee the kind of uses which could be made by people of bad will with these things, and to attempt to forestall this. And in the same way, I think with these other methods of propaganda, we can foresee and we can do a good deal to forestall. I mean, after all, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance.
You write in Enemies of Freedom, you write specifically about the United States. You say this, writing about American political campaigns. You say, all that is needed is money and a candidate who can be coached to look sincere. Political principles and plans for specific action have come to lose most of their importance. The personality of the candidate, the way he is projected by the advertising experts, are the things that really matter.
Well, this is, during the last campaign, there was a great deal of this kind of statement by the advertising managers of the campaign parties, this idea that the candidates had to be merchandised as though they wear soap or toothpaste, and that you had to depend entirely on the personality. I mean, the personality is important, but there are certainly people with an extremely amiable personality, particularly on TV, who might not necessarily be very good in positions of political trust.
Well, do you feel that men like Eisenhower, Stevenson, Nixon, with knowledge of forethought, were trying to pull the wool over the eyes of the American public?
No, but they were being advised by powerful advertising agencies who were making campaigns of a quite different kind from what had been made before. And I think we shall see probably all kinds of new devices coming into the picture. I mean, for example, this thing which got a good deal of publicity last autumn, a subliminal projection. I mean, as it stands, this thing, I think, is of no menace to us at the moment. But I was talking the other day to one of the people who has done most experimental work in the psychological laboratory with this, who was saying precisely this, that it is not at the moment a danger, but once you've established a principle that something works, you can be absolutely sure that the technology of it is going to improve steadily. And I mean, his view of the subject was that, well, maybe they will use it to some extent in the 1960 campaign, but they will probably use it a good deal and much more effectively in the 1964 campaign, because this is the kind of rate at which technology advances.
And we'll be persuaded to vote for a candidate that we do not know that we are being persuaded to vote for.
Exactly. I mean, this is the rather alarming feature, that you're being persuaded below the level of choice and reason.
In regard to advertising, which you mentioned just a little ago, in your writing, particularly in Enemies of Freedom, you attack Madison Avenue, which controls most of our television and radio advertising, newspaper advertising, and so forth. Why do you consistently attack the advertising agency?
Well, no, I think that advertisement plays a very necessary role, but the danger, it seems to me, in a democracy is this. I mean, what does a democracy depend on? A democracy depends on the individual voter making an intelligent and rational choice for what he regards as his enlightened self-interest in any given circumstance. But what these people are doing, I mean, what both for their particular purposes for selling goods and the dictatorial propagandists are doing, is to try to bypass the rational side of man and to appeal directly to these unconscious forces below the surface, so that you are, in a way, making nonsense of the whole democratic procedure, which is based on conscious choice on rational grounds.
Of course, well, maybe you have just answered this next question, because in your essay you write about television commercials, not just political commercials, but television commercials as such, and how, as you put it, today's children walk around singing beer commercials and toothpaste commercials, and then you link this phenomenon in some way with the dangers of a dictatorship. Now, could you spell out the connection, or how do you feel that you have done so sufficiently?
Well, I mean, here, this whole question of children, I think, is a terribly important one, because children are quite clearly much more suggestible than the average grown-up. And again, suppose that that for one reason or another all the propaganda was in the hands of one or very few agencies, you would have an extraordinarily powerful force playing on these children, who after all are going to grow up and be adults quite soon. I do think that this is not an immediate threat, but it remains a possible threat. And
you said something to the effect in your essay that the children of Europe used to be called cannon fodder, and here in the United States they are television and radio fodder.
Well, after all, you can read in the trade journals the most lyrical accounts of how necessary it is to get hold of the children, because then they will be loyal brand buyers later on. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, again, you just translate this into political terms. The dictator says they will be loyal ideology buyers when they're grown up.
We hear so much about brainwashing as used by the communists. Do you see any brainwashing other than that which we've just been talking about that is used here in the United States? Other forms of brainwashing?
Not in the form that has been used in China and in Russia, because this is essentially the application of propaganda methods, the most violent kind, to individuals. It's not a shotgun method like the advertising method. It's a way of getting hold of the person and playing both on his physiology and his psychology till he really breaks down, and then you can implant a new idea in his head. I mean, the descriptions of the methods are really blood-curdling when you read them, and not only the methods applied to political prisoners, but the methods applied, for example, to the training of the young communist administrators and missionaries. They receive an incredibly tough kind of training, which causes about 25% of them to break down or commit suicide, but produces 75% of completely one-pointed fanatics.
The question, of course, that keeps coming back to my mind is this. Obviously, politics in themselves are not evil. Television is not in itself evil. Atomic energy is not evil. And yet you seem to fear that it will be used in an evil way. Why is it that the right people will not, in your estimation, use them? Why is it that the wrong people will use these various devices and for the wrong motives?
Well, I think one of the reasons is that these are all instruments for obtaining power, and obviously the passion for power is one of the most moving passions that exist in man, and after all, all democracies are based on the proposition that power is very dangerous and that it's extremely important not to let any one man or any one small group have too much power for too long a time. After all, what are the British and American constitutions except devices for limiting power? And all these new devices are extremely efficient instruments for the imposition of power by small groups over larger masses.
Well, you ask this question yourself in Enemies of Freedom. I'll put your own question back to you. You ask this. In an age of accelerating overpopulation, of accelerating overorganization, and ever more efficient means of mass communication, how can we preserve the integrity and reassert the value of the human individual? You put the question. Now here's your chance to answer it, Mr. Huxley.
Well, this is obviously, first of all, it's a question of education. I think it's terribly important to insist on individual values. I mean, there is a tendency, as you probably read a book by White, The Organization Man, a very interesting, valuable book, I think, where he speaks about the new type of group morality, group ethic, which speaks about the group as though the group was somehow more important than the individual. But this seems, as far as I'm concerned, to be in contradiction with what we know about the genetical makeup of human beings, that every human being is unique. And it is, of course, on this genetical basis that the whole idea of the value of freedom is based. And I think it's extremely important for us to stress this in all our educational life. And I would say it's also very important to teach people to be on their guard against the sort of verbal booby traps into which they're always being led, to analyze the kind of things that are said to them. Well, I think there is this whole educational side, and I think there are many more things that one could do to strengthen people and to make them more aware of what was being done.
You're a prophet of decentralization.
Well, yes, if this is feasible. It's one of the tragedies, it seems to me. I mean, many people have been talking about the importance of decentralization in order to give back to the voter a sense of direct power. I mean, the voter in an enormous electorate feels quite impotent, and his vote seems to count for nothing. This is not true where the electorate is small and where he is dealing with a group which he can manage and understand. And if one can, as Jefferson, after all, suggested, break up the units into smaller and smaller units, and so get a real self-governing democracy.
Well, that was all very well in Jefferson's day, but how can we revamp our economic system and decentralize and at the same time meet militarily and economically the tough challenge of a country like Soviet Russia?
Well, I think the answer to that is that there are, it seems to me that industrial production is of two kinds. I mean, there are some kinds of industrial production which obviously need the most tremendously high centralization, like the making of automobiles, for example. But there are many other kinds where you could decentralize quite easily and probably quite economically, and that you would then have this kind of decentralized life. After all, you begin to see it now if you travel through the South, this decentralized textile industry which is springing up there.
Mr. Huxley, let me ask you this, quite seriously. Is freedom necessary?
As far as I'm concerned, it is, yes.
Why? Is it necessary for a productive society?
Yes, I should say it is. I mean, a genuinely productive society. I mean, I think you could produce plenty of goods without much freedom, but I think the whole sort of creative life of man is ultimately impossible without a considerable measure of individual freedom, that initiative, creation, all these things which we value, and I think value properly, are impossible without a large measure of freedom.
Well, Mr. Huxley, take a look again at the country which is in the stance of our opponent anyway it would seem to be there, Soviet Russia. It is strong and getting stronger economically, militarily. At the same time, it's developing its art forms pretty well. It seems not unnecessarily to squelch the creative urge among its people, and yet it is not a free society.
It's not a free society, but here is something very interesting, that those members of the society, like the scientists, who are doing the creative work, are given far more freedom than anybody else. I mean, it's a privileged aristocratic society in which, provided that they don't poke their noses into political affairs, these people are given a great deal of prestige, a considerable amount of freedom, and a lot of money. I mean, this is a very interesting fact about the new Soviet regime, and I think what we're going to see is a people on the whole with very little freedom, but with an oligarchy on top enjoying a considerable measure of freedom and a very high standard of living.
And the people down below, the epsilons down below,
enjoying very little.
And you think that that kind of situation can long endure?
I think it can certainly endure much longer than a situation in which everybody is kept down. Because, I mean, they can certainly get their technological and scientific results on such a basis.
Well, the next time that I talk to you then, perhaps we should investigate further the possibility of the establishment of that kind of a society, where the drones work for the queen bees up above.
Well, but yes, but I must say I still believe in democracy. If we can make the best of the creative activities of the people on top, plus those of the people on the bottom, so much the better.
Mr. Huxley, I surely thank you for spending this half hour with us, and I wish you Godspeed, sir.
Thank you.
Aldous Huxley finds himself these days in a peculiar and disturbing position. A quarter of a century after prophesying an authoritarian state in which people were reduced to ciphers, he can point at Soviet Russia and say, "I told you so." The crucial question, as he sees it now, is whether the so-called free world is shortly going to give Mr. Huxley the further dubious satisfaction of saying the same thing about us. Stay tuned for a preview of next week's interview. Till then, Mike Wallace, good night.